Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are so excited that you've decided to join us this afternoon or morning, depending on where you are in the world. And I'm really grateful that you've decided to join and hear about all the different updates we have with Evolve. So, I am going to be the host for today's session. My name is Audrey, and I am Marketing Programs Manager here at Intellum. And I'm very excited to be joined by Senior Product Manager Emily Goldstein. Emily has been working on the Evolve product for over 8 years. So, yes, she is an absolute expert, and she has so much wisdom and so many updates to share with you all today. So, before we dive in, I want to quickly cover off a few housekeeping items. First and foremost, as you heard when you jumped on, this webinar is being recorded. The good news about that is if you need to jump off early, no worries. The recording to this webinar will be sent to your inbox in about an hour. So, that's good news there. Closed captioning is also available. So if you look to the bottom of your screen, there's a small toolbar with an icon that says CC. That is where you'll find the closed captioning option. Also on the toolbar, you'll see the options for chat and for Q&A. So we want this, you're going to hear a lot of information today, but we definitely want to try and make this as interactive as possible. So with that, we encourage you all to place exciting comments, any type of reaction that you might have in the chat. Introduce yourself. We'd love to know where you're tuning in from. So keep all of that chatter in the chat. And then the Q&A box, let's reserve that for your questions. And the reason I want to delineate between the two is because we want to make sure that your questions don't get lost in that chat. We want to make sure we can address as many of them as possible. Okay, and lastly, at the end of this session, you will be prompted to fill out a survey. The purpose of that is just to make sure that you all are getting the most value out of these sessions. So this is the second Evolve webinar that you've heard in the last like 6 months, and we'll continue to have them. So we just want to hear your feedback and make sure that you're leaving with good takeaways and that this is a meaningful time for you. All right, so we've covered a lot of things so far, and we're going to cover any more or many more, but I just want to set the stage for where we're headed for the next 50 minutes or so. We're going to provide a quick recap, and by we, I mean Emily, is going to provide a quick recap of what was launched back in September when we launched the new version of Evolve. We're going to share updates about what features are live in Evolve today and why those are important for you all and your workflows. We're also going to get a chance to see several things live. Emily's going to guide us through a live demo, and you're going to see some incredible updates within the platform itself. And then we're going to talk about what's ahead, what's coming later in Q1, so in about a month from now, what you can expect to see in Q2, and then when our next webinar will be for you all to see additional updates. So we also want to say that's what we're doing, but what we're not doing is taking this time to use as a training session. So we're not going to do a deep dive into certain features, although Emily will do a thorough coverage of many of them. This isn't a time to ask like very nuanced questions about how those functions work, or excuse me, those features work. That can be reserved for a different conversation. So high level, we just want to show what has been in the works. All right. If you're still with me, Emily, let's dive in. Let's take a moment to look back and revisit what was launched in September. I know you're going to give us a quick recap. And for those of us who are on the call who weren't using Evolve at that time or who are being introduced to Evolve for the first time today, can you just provide that quick recap so we have kind of the contextual, understanding before we dive into the what's new?
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to last September, which actually seems like a really long time ago at this point, but that is when we first launched New Evolve, and we made a very intentional choice to rebuild the foundation first. So by that, I mean, we really decided to prioritize things like performance, scalability, long-term flexibility, knowing that not every single advanced legacy feature would be there on day one. And don't get me wrong, like we knew that that wouldn't be an easy decision to make, but we also didn't want to build this in a vacuum, right? We really wanted all of our customers along for the ride. And that's why we offered preview access to New Evolve early. So the goal there was to let our customers get their hands on it, really see where we were headed, and to help us understand what was most important to build next. Because quite frankly, there were a lot of directions that we could have gone, And so it was really important to me that we understood what everyone in this audience and all of our other customers found to be most valuable in their day-to-day workflows. That way we could move fast, but we could also move in the right order. So I also want to be super clear about something because there have been a lot of questions about this, especially over the last few months. So just want to officially share that Legacy Evolve is not going away. You will still have options there. You can keep using Legacy. You can use both in parallel if that's what works best for your team. And there won't be any interruptions to your current day-to-day workflows. But at the same time, I do want to call out that our innovation investment really is going to be 100% into new Evolve. And so I'm hoping that what I'll be showing you today is proof of that momentum, and hopefully we'll get some of you to sign up for a preview account if you haven't done so already.
Amazing. Wow, that's really great to hear that legacy isn't going away. I know that's been a lot of feedback that we receive or questions that we've received. And I know that there was one feature in particular, Emily, that folks were really sad to see missing when we first launched back in September. And it's back, and it's back with even more power. So can you tell us about Logic?
Yeah, so you stated it, Logic is back, and it's not just really back, but it's been rebuilt to be a lot more approachable without losing all of the power that comes along with it. And that's really the thread through everything that we've launched. To be completely honest, like in my opinion, Logic is really the best example of that. So it might be helpful just for those who are listening in who aren't as familiar with it. Logic is really what enables your course to respond to learner behavior. So in its simplest form, think if a learner does X, then the course can do Y. Um, and so instead of building multiple versions of a course, you can build maybe just one course that adapts. So that would work well for things like role-based paths or scenario outcomes, targeted feedback, compliance gating, all without feeling like you have to code your course or create dozens of versions of a course. So a true time saver there. But I'll demo that in a bit so you all can see it for yourself.
Awesome. This is really exciting. Now I'm curious, Emily, what does this mean for our users?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first and foremost, your feedback directly shapes the future of Evolve. So everything that we've prioritized and built so far, from logic to workflow improvements, rebuilding some of those key elements, that all came from listening to how you all actually use Evolve. We actually had some of our customers and partners engage with us like from the very beginning, even from the initial prototyping phase. I know some of them might actually be listening in, so thank you again for your help there. Um, but we didn't really just rebuild those features just because they existed before. We rebuilt the ones that drive the most value in your day-to-day work. So that is very much going to continue, and we want to continue to gather as much feedback from everyone as possible as they start to spend more time in the new version. Second is you can build sophisticated adaptive learning without the added complexity. And again, that's really the heart of this evolution. And Logic really is the perfect example of that. So you can use it to create branching paths, personalized feedback, the role-based experiences, like I alluded to earlier. These are all the kinds of learning designs that really do adapt to the learner. But in New Evolve, you're building it all in line in the context of the course without having to navigate away or manage a separate rules engine, which can become quite cumbersome, especially the more triggers and actions that you're adding to the course. So really what I'm hoping everyone will take away today is we're still providing you with all of that power, but without the added friction. And third is you can deliver polished on-brand experiences with confidence. So between the rebuilt theming suite, things we've recently introduced like device-specific editing, animations, that was just released actually just a couple of days ago. The ability to assign branding to your courses, so things like adding an icon or even a footer to a course. We're not going to make you have to compromise on the overall learner experience. They're still going to see something intentional. All of your stakeholders are going to see something that looks incredibly professional. And what I really love about that is you don't have to fight the tool to get there. So when you really put all of these three things together, it's again not just about bringing features back, it's about building smarter, it's about moving faster and really feeling confident that the product is evolving with you. And yes, I would say the pun there is definitely intended. Audrey, you know this, but I look for that opportunity in pretty much every webinar that I co-host, and at least I personally feel like it doesn't get old, but maybe those in the chat might disagree.
I certainly don't think it gets old. Evolve keeps evolving. We have to keep the pun going. I love it. All right, so we've talked about the what. What was built when we first launched. We've talked about what's staying, right? What's back? Logic is back. You're also going to be talking about what's coming. And you just shared the why. Why is all this important? Why have we made all of this innovation a priority? So let's talk about the win. When users log in to Evolve today, or say they log in later tomorrow, what new features are they going to see?
Mhm. Yeah, good question. So to me, it really falls into a few clear buckets like you're seeing here. So first would be the core authoring experience. That's going to be your page builder and your theme builder. That's really the foundation. That's where you're going to be spending most of your time building your course. And that's really where we first focused on reducing friction and increasing your confidence in creating a really on-brand interactive learning experience. Then you have your day-to-day speed boosters outside of caffeine, of course. Um, I like to call these workflow accelerators that make building faster and smoother. So these are going to be the things that might seem small individually, but collectively they can truly change the course authoring experience entirely. Um, then there are the pieces that really drive engagement and polish, right? So interactive elements, device-specific editing and theming, animations, branding. These are going to be the features that really shape what your learners actually experience and ultimately how confident you feel in sharing your work. And then finally, we have the big differentiator, that's logic. That's where adaptive learning really comes to life. So I feel like there's probably no better way than to prove that than to actually show you all of these. So I'm just going to walk right through these in the same order that you all would naturally experience them as an author, starting from the top. All right.
All right,
So,
Emily, I am going to stop sharing. You can take over screen share.
okay, perfect. Let me go ahead and do that. Great. Okay. So at a high level, what you're seeing here is the new course authoring experience. So the biggest shift that you're going to notice right away is that everything is in line. It's truly a WYSIWYG editor. What I mean by that is what you see is as you're building is exactly what your learners are going to see as they're engaging with the course. So you're not flipping back and forth between preview and edit mode constantly. You're not navigating away to separate configuration panels. You're building it directly in context. So you can see here, I'm going to assign an editor label. It's probably a little bit big for what I want to do, but let's see. All right, let me make that a little bit smaller. And you can see even as I'm flipping the card, I'm still able to fully see my text and edit it as I'm going. And so that may sound simple, but it does actually change the experience dramatically because it means less friction, it means less context switching, less cognitive load while you're building. You can even click right into the content itself. So let me scroll a little bit here. So if I wanted to just, again, hover right over here, I can highlight my text. I can even apply a color override if I'd like to, and that'll be reflected right here in the editor. I can also adjust layouts without having to hunt through dozens of settings. So if you even need to make something like a specific design adjustment, you can layer in custom styling at the course level without disrupting your global theme. So you can see here, I'm going right into this design tab. Maybe I want to change my background color of the multiple choice options to match the background. So I'm going to just quickly adjust my color to purple, and it just feels a little bit lighter. So while I'm actually on the topic of design, I do want to spend some time talking through the new theme builder. And I actually feel like I must have said this in the last webinar, but I'm just going to repeat it again. But this probably isn't too much of a hot, excuse me, too much of a hot take because I've heard others say this too. This is my favorite part of New Evolve. That's not just because it looks better, but it's because of what it unlocks for you. So I'll just spend a minute here. And maybe just for some background context, when we rebuilt theming, the goal wasn't just to modernize the interface, it was to make brand control feel intuitive. So in Legacy, theming was obviously very powerful, but it could also feel incredibly layered and maybe just a little bit intimidating to a novice user. So here in New Evolve, you can see your changes to the theme as you make them in real time. So things like typography, maybe I want to change my font here. I might want to even change the weight or the line height. And that's just for the headings. It gets really powerful when you start thinking through the design system for your paragraph, your header, your footer, things like individual elements. So if I wanted to um, perhaps change my global styling for my accordion, I could simply go into this Elements tab, Accordion, and change my background color to this nice red color. So you're not having to guess what something is going to look like once it publishes. You're truly designing with confidence right within the experience itself. So to me, that's a really big shift from legacy. Strong branding isn't just about aesthetics. It impacts things like stakeholder confidence, executive buy-in, external credibility, and maybe most importantly, learner perception. So with this new theming suite, you get structured consistency throughout your global theme, but you also have the flexibility to tailor at the course level when you need to. So let me just jump right back here. I showed this with the multiple choice question earlier, but let's say I want to just change the background color of just this one section. I can go ahead and do that here. Maybe I'll change it back to that red as well. And that's all, again, without having to break your entire design system. So one theme that you're going to notice as I walk through all of these features is it's that balance of not just power, but also approachability. Well, I could probably go on for hours just talking about theming alone, but there really are so many new features that I want to show off. I'll move on to the next one. So let's talk about what we've launched since September 9th. I can actually go back to the theme editor to walk you all through the first one. This is something that actually came up from the launch webinar. Um, and this is really the first item from that bucket of workflow accelerators I was speaking about earlier. We really wanted to start with what we knew you all absolutely needed. These are the everyday building blocks. They're not edge cases, they're not flashy, but simply the things that you can come to rely on every single day as you're building your courses. So first one is course level theme preview. So as I'm editing the theme, like I said, I was maybe updating the font earlier. Um, Maybe I want to see how this theme would look applied to a given course. So that way you can design confidently before you publish. You don't have to open multiple tabs just to see what your branding changes will look like. You won't necessarily, make a adjustment to a theme and have that cascade to perhaps hundreds of courses that contain it. We definitely don't want that. So we thought we would take the opportunity to make this a little bit easier. So in this case, I've just pulled in this course that I'll be walking through in a bit, but maybe I just want to update my background color to red. Um, so again, it's just a little bit easier for me to visualize how these changes will look in the course without just relying just on that theme preview, which again, this is great. It kind of gives you your examples of how the global palette, your styling will appear for every single element that exists in Evolve, but sometimes you just need a little bit more as you're finessing. All right. Um, so next is naming manual backups. That's another one that came from our launch webinar. This is probably going to come in handy for me right now, actually, because I've made a lot of changes to this theme, even in the last few minutes. I made some changes to the course, so should probably change it back so no one gets mad at me. So I went right into this course backup section here. Um, as a reminder, Evolve automatically creates backups when you make what we call destructive changes. So if I delete this section, for example, that's considered to be a destructive change. You'll notice it immediately created this automatic backup. I can restore that if I want to. However, we all know how much time goes into fine-tuning a course. It may not be just about deleting certain aspects of it, but sometimes you've just invested so much time where you feel like maybe after a few hours, okay, this is a really good checkpoint. I don't want to lose any of the work that I've just invested my whole day in. So that might be before something like a big design overhaul, or maybe before restructuring content or handing it off to a teammate. So now you can create a manual backup whenever you want, and you can even name it something meaningful so that it's easy to find later. So this automatically created that backup for me when I clicked on create backup, but I also renamed this one yesterday. I have the ability to preview it before I restore it, but since I know I definitely want this to be restored, I just went ahead and did that right on the fly, and it has all of those updates reflected for me, so I can just go back to where I started yesterday. So imagine that in a real world scenario, right? Like an entire team collaborating, maybe there are multiple rounds of edits, stakeholder feedback coming in. So again, now you have really clear and intentional checkpoints if you need to go back to a particular version of that course. All right, so now that I'm back in the editor with my course backup restored, I do want to show something that's actually brand new, which is drag and drop. So I'm going to switch over to another course, maybe look at something a little bit more fresh. So I'm excited about drag and drop because it is a brand new feature that wasn't available in Legacy. While it might seem small at first, it does fundamentally change how it feels to build. So let's go to page 2 here. Um, Now, instead of adjusting layout through panels or restructuring content manually, though you can certainly do that, you still have the same features that you did in New Evolve. So you have your moving rows up and down, you have your sections, and you have your ability to move them around if that's easier for you, if that's your preferred approach. But we did also introduce this drag and drop feature. So if I wanted to just simply move this column, I have this little handle here, this drag bar. I can move it right into the row above it, for example, and then maybe back into a different column. It just makes it easier to make some of these changes on the fly without having to even use a separate panel to do that. So again, just kind of keeping you in that creative flow. So that's really one of the several quality of life improvements that we've layered in. These are the kind of enhancements that, again, may not be the flashiest, but they do make building faster and more intuitive. So this is something that I showed off in the initial launch webinar that I'll show again. But even things like swapping out completely different component types, like if I perhaps have this accordion component here, and I want to simply swap it over to a tab element because, again, they're very similar in nature, very similar use cases. I can simply swap that out without having to rebuild the entire element. So that's that just in terms of some of the course level changes and efficiencies we've introduced. Um, One other thing that I have seen come up quite a bit in some of my customer research is asset replacement. So if you've ever maybe updated a logo, swapped an image, revised a downloadable file, and then perhaps had to hunt through multiple versions of courses just to update it everywhere, that can become pretty painful and unwieldy. So let's say that I want to update this static image to include an animation. Technically I can do that here, right, directly in the course, and that's fine, but perhaps there are dozens of courses that contain this one image, and it's easier for me through more of a centralized approach to update it in the asset library. So I'm going to pivot over to this assets page. Here it is right here. Um, Now it'll tell me immediately when I swap to this replace tab how many instances of that asset exist. In this case, it's in two different courses, two different instances. Um, so that functionality was available in Legacy and we brought it forward, but we've also strengthened it a little bit. There's this new permissions tab here, and we've updated it so that that changes at scale are intentional. So this way, you're not accidentally impacting content across a course without the right visibility or the right access. What this does is it gives you that centralized control, but with guardrails. So if I only want it to be restricted to a few different editors who might be working on my course, then that just, again, adds a little bit more guardrails in place than perhaps someone coming in and unintentionally making a change that impacts, again, hundreds of courses if you have that many in your library. So I'm going to go ahead and assign this to be a little bit more engaging, more animated. I'll replace that. Gives me that nice little warning to tell me to be absolutely sure. Um, and then when I scroll down again, you can see that this image has been replaced for me, but it's in that very centralized way. Again, you could certainly replace it just directly in the course itself, but just makes it a little bit easier if you have, or if you know that you need to replace this asset in literally every course that contains it. So may seem like a small thing, but for larger teams or maybe for courses that might evolve over time, this is definitely a big time saver and a risk reducer as well. Okay, so let's move on to some of the new elements. Well, as much as I would like to walk through each of these individually, I feel like that would probably turn this webinar more into a training session, and I have a lot more that I need to make sure I walk you all through today, but I do want to show you something. So if I open up my element selector here, you'll immediately see that some of the most requested elements are back. So particularly the interactive elements like iframe, checklist, number input, text input, hot graphic, card drop. So I know that when we launched New Evolve in September, this was one of the biggest questions that we received, like, when are these coming back? So first, they are here, but more importantly, they're also rebuilt on the new foundation. And so what that means for you is, again, it's not just feature parity with legacy, but we're building upon it and we're truly enabling design experiences like applied practice, reflection-based learning, compliance validations, open response assessments, especially with the number and text input. So these aren't really just boxes to check. They're the tools that really allow you to design a little bit more intentionally. And again, with number input and text input specifically, they're certainly useful on their own in things like assessments, perhaps. But when you combine them with logic, which we'll get to in just a bit, that's really when adaptive learning starts to take shape and courses stop being static and really start responding to learner input. So, with something like a text input, imagine the learner entering their name or their role, and then seeing the course content become a personalized experience for them based on their response. So again, the toolkit is here. We feel like the core building blocks really are back, and now they're ready to be layered into more dynamic experiences. So I would encourage everyone listening in who maybe signed up in September and felt like, well, this is great, but some of these elements aren't here for us yet. We don't feel like we want to use New Evolve at this time. I would definitely suggest that you give it another look. Okay, let's jump into device-specific editing. So that's another one I want to highlight. We all know that our learners are not all sitting at a desktop all the time. They might be on laptops, they might be on tablets, phones, sometimes switching between all three. So when the experience doesn't translate well across devices, we all see that engagement might drop, confidence drops, brand perception drops. So instead of designing once and kind of hoping that it might look good everywhere, now you have more intentional control. So you can design for the experience that your learners are actually having. What I love about New Evolve is we've introduced this device-specific toggle. So you can see that I'm able to edit specifically for each screen size. I'm not just guessing how this is going to render. I will say, I just launched into live preview. It's absolutely still there when you need it. I totally understand that sometimes you might need live preview, especially if the course might contain more complex interactions or logic. But back in the editor of the course, I'm still designing directly in context. I can see it, I can adjust it, I can again even define padding at the device level, and then on top of that, we've also made device-specific theming much more approachable. So let's say you might want to fine-tune the styling, the typography, the sizing of the font, or even the weight. I'm able to do that right here. I can change the spacing. And then again, I can do that for tablet as well. So every experience can truly be tailored to the device, and feels a little bit more intentional and polished. So what that means for you is, there's less compromise you have to make. There's more confidence that the experience that your learners are having actually reflects the quality of your brand. And the best part is that it doesn't feel heavy to manage. So it's powerful, but it still feels intuitive. Okay, so I definitely feel like I have been talking a lot, but this, in my opinion, is just a testament to how much the Evolve team has rebuilt over the last few months. I'm not even able to properly speak to everything in the full hour. I kind of just picked the highlights that I felt everyone would resonate with the most. Um, there is one last thing I'd like to talk about before we move over to logic, though, and that's animations. So animations, they're brand new. We released them 2 days ago. And to be clear, it's not just about movement on the screen, it's about intention. We all know that brand isn't optional. It shapes how your learners experience the course, it influences executive perception, it signals things like professionalism, polish, and animations play a bigger role in that than we sometimes realize. They create rhythm, they guide attention, they make interactions feel deliberate instead of static. So what I love as well is that we've defined animations at the theme level now. So there's a brand new animation tab in New Evolve today if you were to log in. So if your brand has a specific feel, like subtle and professional or bold and energetic, you can set that tone once and have it carry through the entire experience. You can even customize animations at different aspects of the course. So page, section, row, column, even element. Um, and in support of that, we've also introduced a custom animation option. And in my opinion, this is where it gets really powerful because you're not just limited to some of these preset styles, though you can certainly use them. Um, you really have a little bit more control, whether you want something that's a little bit more understated or something more dynamic and expressive. Um, so one thing from a demo perspective is animations don't run on the theme preview because that could be a little bit distracting when you're trying to define your global palette. So let me just go right back into this course editor here. All right, so let's say we want to animate this hero image here. So just to show off that custom styling before, I've selected custom. Again, there's a lot of different options here. You can delay, you can change the duration, even bounciness, opacity. Maybe I'll put in a nice little rotation here. Um, so again, you have that precision control when you do need a little bit more emphasis. It's that same balance that we've been talking about through this entire rebuild. It's structured, but it's flexible. So this is really great too because we also have the ability to preview that animation right in line in the editor again. You also have that right in the course and again, even at the device level. So you get to kind of customize it depending on the device and to create that experience that you feel like looks best to you and really reflects your brand. So all right. Um, I would just remind everyone again, this is just something that we launched a couple of days ago. We are truly rapidly rebuilding a lot of those valuable features from Legacy Evolve. So maybe if what I've shown earlier wasn't quite enough to drive you to try New Evolve, maybe this will be it. But if not, I also want to make sure that I walk you through logic. So let me jump right into that. All right. Um, So again, logic is what allows you to design experiences that adapt, and that way you can have maybe one version of a course without duplicating content or having to create multiple versions. So in this example, we built something like almost like a fun marketplace scenario. So it is a little bit playful, but the mechanics behind it really are quite practical. So imagine applying this to role-based onboarding or regional compliance training or performance-based certification. So let's go ahead and start our day here. So here the learner chooses what they want to sell at a fictional marketplace. Maybe it's vegetables, fruit, or honey. And of course, I'm going to select veggies because they're reliable and hearty. Um, all right, so that single decision changes the entire experience for me. So already I'm starting off with a certain amount of gold. I have 5. I have a certain number of quality points for my vegetables. So I'm going to go ahead and start my journey. Right away, different content appears. Now my path is blocked, and I have to decide whether I want to answer a riddle or pay gold to pass or just try to wade across. But I'm feeling like maybe I can answer a riddle today, so I'm going to choose that approach. Um, the more you take, the more you leave behind. So I'm going to assume that the answer there is footsteps. Great. So I've answered correctly and I'm awarded with 2 gold. Now you can see that that's incremented by the additional 2, and I now have 2 gold because, again, this is all powered by variables, which are quite powerful. Um, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and cross the bridge. And then you can see again, it's almost like a choose your own adventure. Now I've made it through the forest, but I found a leather pouch with gold in it. I'm going to decide to be charitable today and return it to the traveler. And in so doing, I actually gain additional gold and additional quality. Again, that's all powered by variables behind the scenes. So if I continue to the market, I'm going to choose to display my veggies in a stand. Um, I'll say that I'm open for business. And right at the end of the course, it's the end of the day. I see that I've sold my vegetables. I'm going to review my day. And even with my best intentions, I didn't maybe have a great sales day, but I still have a few veggies that I sold, and I can feel pretty good about that. I have more gold than I left with, and more gold and quality than I started with. Um, all right. So you can assume the end of the course kind of resulted in this outcome, but from a learner's experience, there you can anticipate that their final result would be completely different than another's. So again, this is just one course. But behind the scenes, you can see here that all of the options that I have created in the initial cargo setting, they're all hidden here and they're all powered by actions and triggers. And it's really easy to see the content that's hidden. We have this little icon here. We've kind of ported that over from Legacy. I can choose to show it or display it. And again, logic is what handles that variation. As I tab across here, I have this new logic panel here. I've got my actions. I can see them all listed here. I have my global actions, which apply to the whole course, and local actions to specific content. I can still set my variables here and create them. I can even see the amount of times they're used across the course. I've got my dialogues, so I can still customize those and choose to trigger those at key inflection points. And even these can be responsive. So again, we're really trying to take some of the features we've introduced and add them to features where we can truly improve the learner experience and even the branding experience. And so let me jump right into this page here. Again, this piece of content is hidden. It's really easy for me to just hover over it, see the actions used. So in this case, if a graphic is viewed, then my variable increases. It's all really easy for me to, again, edit inline in the course. With Legacy Evolve, one of the things that we had heard from customers is super powerful, but having to navigate to a completely different page to set up the triggers and then actually be able to understand what they're doing in the course could get a little bit unwieldy. So instead of having to manage rules and spend so much time on that, you're truly designing the experience instead. All right, so I could definitely spend a lot more time on logic. Again, there's quite a bit that you can do with actions and variables, but I do want to keep us moving. I want to show you what's coming next. So I'll say this again, like I've kind of alluded to in the previous demos, but I do hope that some of these things that we're introducing here might compel you to check out New Evolve and maybe let us know what you think about the new logic interface. Like I mentioned before, we have introduced some additional improvements like those global actions and better visibility into your logic setup. So please do take the opportunity to test it out. All right. I think that concludes that portion of the demo, Audrey.
That was awesome. If anyone agrees with me, please share your excitement in the chat. I've already seen some comments, but that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Emily, for walking us through all of those different elements. And seeing it all in action makes it hard to believe there's even more coming. So let's dive in and share with folks what they can expect in Q1 and Q2.
Definitely. Yeah, so there is quite a bit in store for the rest of Q1 and for Q2 as well. So I do want to be transparent that a lot of what I'm going to walk through is still actively in development. So I may not be able to show every feature live just yet, but can definitely share what's coming. I can even share some early stage designs for some of these items just to give you a clear picture and to demonstrate, visually where we're headed. And as you've seen with animations already, we just released that a couple of days ago. So these updates really are moving quickly. It may be that next week some of these things might even be available in New Evolve. So um, Canvas element. I do feel like there's still a couple of additional elements that we do need to introduce. Apart from Canvas element, there's also things like confidence slider. And people who have been using New Evolve or have been using Legacy Evolve rather for a number of years may see Canvas element and think, wait, what is that? I have never seen Canvas in Legacy Evolve before. But it's actually a bit of a makeover. So it is formerly known as infographic. We all know that infographic is incredibly powerful, but it did have a lot of limitations. I reached out to a bunch of customers who may actually be listening in. I think I saw some names there, but um, but some of those challenges are things that we took very seriously. So some of you may not know this, but all of the elements that we have rebuilt in New Evolve have been built with accessibility in mind. It is not just an afterthought to us. So the rebuilt version of Canvas will be accessible. So again, it's like we didn't just rebuild what was in Legacy, but we tried to reimagine it. So some of the improvements as well would be like better control over layering visuals, the ability to organize content without elements stacking awkwardly. I know how difficult it can be when you have maybe 10 different images that are grouped together, and then it kind of just ends up being really difficult for you to accurately understand how they appear in the infographic. And again, importantly, the ability to reorder focus order for accessibility purposes. And that last piece to me is huge. It means you can create visually rich and layered experiences without having to exclude learners who rely on things like assistive technologies. So again, not just a feature improvement, but it's truly inclusive design. All right, so additional enhancements. I know that seems very vague. So what I mean by that is there is one area where we're expanding, and that's media support within elements like tabs and accordions. We all know that learning today isn't static, it's layered, it's visual, it's interactive. So by enabling richer media inside of some of these structured elements, you can really create more immersive experiences without having to break layout or rely on workarounds. So again, this one theme I feel like I keep coming back to is flexibility without sacrificing structure. And that is currently in the works. So hopefully you'll see that over the coming weeks. Another one that has come up a lot from feedback. So we know how crucial video streaming support is. We've spoken with customers who say that they get additional insights from some of those video streams that are embedded in their courses. So we didn't want to lose out on that. So we also know that for many teams, video is a core part of the learning experience. So whether that's onboarding or product training, leadership development. And so we're baking streaming directly into our existing media element. That will make video smoother, it'll make it more reliable, especially if you're delivering content to teams across different regions. And what I love about that as well is that it helps us simplify the experience. So you're not bouncing between different versions of similar tools. If we don't need a video stream element and a media element, why not consolidate them into one element that offers functionality for both? All right. One thing that isn't listed here, but is a little bit of a surprise because I do want to share a quick design of what this is going to look like. Let me go ahead and do that now. Audrey, if you don't mind, I'd like to steal back my screen sharing permissions.
It is all yours.
All right. Let's go back to my screen. Okay. All right, so course menus. I want to finally show off and let everyone know that these are coming back. So we know that course menus, again, they're more than navigation. They provide context, they signal progress to the learner, and for many of you listening in, they're also just part of your brand experience. So we asked ourselves, why should the course menu feel separate from the rest of your course, right? In New Evolve, you're actually going to be able to set any page as a course menu. You can see right here in this home icon, that's how it would be like designated, this is your course menu. That said, it doesn't even need to be the first page of the course. You can really customize it. That's what I love about it so much is it really is flexible. It's like any other page. So you can imagine that actually you can add additional elements. You can add animations, use logic, control the layout, set those design overrides if you'd like to. You can also define which pages would appear in the menu. And then what's also really exciting to me is, again, you can customize whether you want this to display in a card or a list view. But additionally, we're also adding the ability to add these progress indicators throughout the course. So even if you don't even want a course menu, you can also just add progress indicators at any point in the course. That way you can give learners visibility into their journey without always relying on a traditional course menu outline. And you can even customize the look and feel of that. So I really love how, again, these elements can be included on pages outside of the course menu. It never hurts to provide that additional context and navigation for the learner. And that means that you can provide learners with, again, that experience that feels intentional, integrated, and on brand, not just bolted on. So this is the one that I really wanted to show off. We're kicking off development for that next week. So hopefully that will be an early Q2 arrival as well.
Woohoo! So much to look forward to. Okay, let's go back to the other items that are coming in Q2, and then we will round things out.
Yeah, okay. So, all right. So let me zoom out for just a minute, because maybe for some folks who are listening in, you may be Intellum platform customers as well. You might not be, but for anyone who is new to anyone who's new to the platform on the Intellum side, this part is particularly exciting. So if you're not, that is totally okay. I'll explain why it matters. One of the things that people really love most about Legacy Evolve really is that end-to-end experience from building your course, to publishing it, to seeing how it performed all within the Intellum LMS. So first and foremost, we are rebuilding that. This is another one where we would have loved for it to be included in the initial rollout, but had to make some intentional decisions there. But we are bringing it back and we're also making it better. So I love to be able to say that. um, but first of all, Cloud Sync is coming back. So that means that as you build and update your course in Evolve, those updates are going to sync directly to the LMS and be reflected in every activity that contains it on the platform side. So that could be one activity or that could be multiple activities across even multiple platform accounts. That way you're not managing duplicate versions, you're not re-uploading content, you're not wondering which version is live. You really do just build once, you publish, and it stays connected. This next one is also something I'm super excited about, and actually, this doesn't even need to be like a differentiator from the platform side. Evolve only customers might also benefit from this too. So there are no more separate activities per locale. That's a huge value add because that way you're only having to create one course and all of the locale versions of that course are managed within the same zip file. So you're managing one experience, not five slightly different copies. um, And the additional benefit of the Intellum platform integration is the translation and localization API. So if you have a third-party translation service that you want to integrate with, you can really truly automate that, makes it a lot faster and more efficient. All right, so let's say you've built your course, you've localized it, it's synced over to the platform. Now it's ready to be live to learners. And again, another differentiating aspect of the platform integration is that these courses will render completely in line in the platform. So no more having to download those SCORM files and then import them into an LMS. You don't have to launch, or the learners don't have to launch those experiences in a separate tab anymore in like a super disjointed way. That way, learning doesn't feel like it's necessarily jumping to a separate tool. It really feels seamless. And what we've excuse me, what we've actually seen is that when the Evolve course renders in line, that there are actually 47% higher completion rates compared to courses that launch in a new tab. So that's really not cosmetic. That's really measurable learner impact. But it doesn't even stop there. After you publish, you have full visibility into the learner journey as well. So with this, you don't just see whether someone completed the course, you can actually see how they engaged with every single step that they take throughout the course. So that's things like the elements that they interacted with, it's how many attempts they made on a question, how long they spent watching a video. That way you can identify friction, like maybe if a if you're noticing that there's a particular question in a course where everyone is getting it wrong and they're losing all of their attempts, that might be an opportunity to refine that question. But ultimately, getting all of this data in a really consumable way truly improves outcomes over time. We know that there have been some challenges with the existing integration and the way that the data is represented. So I am personally really excited to have made some improvements that will really allow and empower everyone to understand how learners are engaging with the course end to end. So to me, that's really what makes this integration powerful. It's not just authoring, it's not just publishing, but it's really the full journey. So like from creation of the course all the way to delivery and then to insight, it's all connected.
Yeah, Emily, that's truly amazing to think what an impact an inline course can have on the learner experience. I mean, a 47% increase in completion rate is so significant. So thanks for sharing that stat. Okay, I
Yeah.
know I'm looking at the time. We have about 7 minutes left. I know you
Yeah.
have one last important update to share, and then
Yes.
we'll get to as many questions as possible.
Yeah. So this is the one that I feel like I say this about everything, quite honestly. I said, this is the one I'm excited about. I mean, I'm excited about everything, but I am truly excited about AI. I know it's been a question that has come up ever since we launched New Evolve, especially saying that New Evolve is AI native. So when we rebuilt New Evolve, we weren't just thinking about bringing features forward. We were trying to think about what's next. So that's not just about what's next for Evolve. It's truly about where learning is headed or where AI is headed. So we were very intentional about how we structured New Evolve, how we built it so that AI could actually be part of the experience and not something that just gets layered on top later. I think we've all seen that approach. AI can generate content, sure, but it doesn't really understand the structure of the course or the learning design behind it or your brand standards or how logic shapes the experience. That is not the experience that we're building. AI has changed dramatically. We've all seen it, even in just the last 6 months since we've even launched the new version. So we've decided to adjust our strategy right alongside it. We are making really strong progress in AI-powered course generation in a way that actually understands how your course is being built. So I don't have anything to necessarily show today, but we will soon, and that might even be a good reason to join us for our next webinar in June.
I love the plug. Okay, so we will have an upcoming webinar in June, as we stated at the start, but we do have 5 minutes left, and we have 15 questions in the chat. So we'll see how many of these that we can get through. Thank you so much for being an engaged audience and wanting to ask questions. So, Emily, I'm just going to read these aloud and we can kind of go through the list together. All right. The first question is, in the new Evolve, is there or will there be variables?
Is there, I'm sorry, I didn't catch
Is
something about
there
variables.
or will there be variables?
Yes, there are. There are variables.
Beautiful. Next question. Will we ever be able to drag elements between sections or pages?
Um, Potentially. I would like to I think like basically we got out the initial version of drag and drop because we felt it would be a valuable improvement. Totally understand why it would be nice to be able to drag different parts just, with a little less guardrail. So yeah, we would definitely consider doing that in the future.
Amazing. Okay, we're powering through. Is the new Evolve going to be scrolling only or will there be pages as well?
Um, Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think probably a lot of these questions might have a similar answer. What I would say is I'm not necessarily saying no to anything right now. I think, going back to what I had mentioned earlier, where, we are continuing to build, we are looking to get feedback to understand what are the more valuable experiences, especially on the branding and the interactive side. So maybe Audrey, I can get some of these questions maybe sent to me at a later point, and I can follow up with some of the people who are asking these questions and dive a little bit more into the use cases.
Absolutely. Yep, I've captured them all. With the 3 minutes, I'm going to just ask a few more. So, for the logic portion, how is the completion set? Is it based on a learner completing their portion of the path only?
You can actually customize. So there's I didn't show it in the demo, but there are actually completion settings for the Evolve course on the course settings page. So you can have the completion method for the course set to logic, and then you can set those specific actions that would be required to complete the course via the logic panel.
Amazing. Will rich media be an option in question feedback?
Um, Again, probably similar response to earlier. I'm not saying no. Um, I would want to dig in a little bit more just to understand the use cases, but I mean, I could probably understand what some of those use cases are now. Just a question of prioritization.
Okay. And then within components or themes, are there any checks for WCAG accessibility? I remember on the Legacy Evolve, it will give you a little icon to appear when something wasn't accessible.
Hmm. So we don't really we have I wonder if this question is asking more, are we going to specifically call out whether elements can be customized to be accessible? In Legacy Evolve, we don't currently have like a check that would say whether or not what you've built is accessible or not. It's more which elements and extensions in Legacy can be made to be accessible. So right now we're actually going through an audit with a third party from an accessibility perspective, just to be able to, back up like, hey, everything that we have built in New Evolve can be made to be accessible. We might consider adding those indicators at that point in time.
Amazing. Okay. With maybe 30 seconds left, I do want to say we will get to these questions offline. So thank you again for those of you who have submitted your questions to us. Like Emily requested, we will be sharing these offline. But before we leave, I just want to let you all know that we want this conversation to continue beyond this webinar. So if you aren't already in the Evolve community, we want to invite you to join that today. And I'm going to be dropping a link in the chat right now that will take you to the community so you can continue the conversation there, continue asking questions, to continue to be engaged in the conversation. And know that, again, as Emily reiterated multiple times throughout this session, your feedback is so critical to the changes and innovation that we make. So, thank you all for being here. We appreciate your time and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yep, thanks everyone.